Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Friday, December 16th, 2022. And our top story today, U.S. small business confidence rebounded in November. And joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Holly Wade with the National Federation of Independent Business. Holly, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Great. Thank you so much for the invitation. This is wonderful.
Yeah, this is great. And before we get into, small business, as you know, is the lifeblood of an economy. Before we get into some of the survey results from November, let's talk about who or what maybe is the National Federation of Independent Business. Who are your members? Who do you represent? Let's talk about that for a minute.
Sure, absolutely. So the National Federation of Independent Business is the largest small business association, and we represent small firms across the country in all major industries and advocate on their behalf on the issues that are most important to them on a federal and state level. And so we ask our members a few times a year, asking them about what their main concerns are, what their main challenges are in operating their business, and work on their behalf to help advocate for them in alleviating some of those pressures in business operations. I mean, we certainly understand that they are as you said, the backbone of the economy. They are the resilience, the flexibility, the driver of innovations for the U.S. economy. And so we want to make sure that they have a wonderful, supportive environment to operate from.
And thank you for that. I just want to make sure the audience and myself understood all that. And let's talk about, it's been a tough several years. Let's just put it out there. It's been a tough several years for small business in particular, for all business, for Americans, for the world in a lot of different ways. But let's just talk about, we've got the pandemic. Now we've got some market volatility. We've got some inflation. Let's talk about these survey results for a second. How are small businesses processing all of this that's going on? What is their confidence level like as of the end of November?
Sure. So confidence, unfortunately, is pretty low right now among small business owners for the most part. They are dealing with a lot of headwinds. They've been dealing with a lot of headwinds. And unfortunately, those headwinds have been transitioning and changing kind of underneath their feet as they've operated their business over the last 2.5 years. So early on, it was, the shutdown and business restrictions on their activity. And so navigating that was kind of the initial bulk of the challenge. But right now, they're dealing with inflation and staffing shortages. Those are the two big headwinds that most small business owners are telling us are their biggest problems in operating their business.
Yeah, and let's talk about inflation a little bit, or a lot. I mean, it's like a lot, so it's hard to make it a small number. But let's talk about that for a second, because small businesses have to buy materials. If you're a restaurant, you have to buy food. If you're a construction company or a small construction company, you have to buy materials. The cost of all those things have gone up, and then to make just a small profit, Holly, you've got to charge a little bit more to the end user, to the consumer. It's that inflation is having, and I also minimized gasoline. That has had a significant impact because you have to get from point A to point B to deliver the goods. What's been the impact of inflation?
It's been incredibly stressful. The gas price problems earlier this year, or I guess in the middle of the summer, is when it all peaked in June, July. And that was a huge cost pressure for so many businesses. And it related to whether they were delivering goods and services, but also just, if they had machinery, or if they had, using trucks or vans or other type of vehicles for business purposes. It was really hitting a lot of small business owners' bottom line. And on top of that, restaurants were having a particularly difficult time with food inflation and having to absorb those costs. And we've talked to a lot of business owners who were telling us that over the last year, this is the first time in a while that they've had to go back and look at their price structure and increase prices across the board to absorb those cost pressures. Unfortunately for small business owners, the initial hit is to their earnings. So we've heard small business owners feeling a lot of pressure and trying to absorb those costs, either in kind of reconfiguring business operations, increasing prices, but initially their earnings are what's absorbing those initial inflationary pressures, and that's caused a lot of stress among businesses. And unfortunately the two kind of go hand in hand in adding to the stress. Inflation and staffing shortages, they've had to dedicate a lot more time to business operations that they haven't had to deal with, well, for some of them for decades. We haven't seen this type of environment for a very long time.
Yeah, since I was a kid in the 70s and into the
Me
80s
too.
when we had yeah, well, I had hair back then too. Let me ask you about the labor shortage here, because a lot of small businesses, I'm in Charlotte, you're in Washington, D.C., you go talk to small business owners. One of the things that I hear is it's hard to find people to work the jobs. And I'm not sure why that is. Maybe you have a reason for it. But where are we with the labor shortage? Did it improve at all? Are small business owners able to find just workers to even work part-time for their shifts?
Sure. No, it's still a problem for a lot of small businesses, especially those in the service industry. So restaurants and other types of services and retail shops, but also construction, which is kind of an interesting industry demographic for still having shortages for labor, because we keep seeing on the news that there's this decline in, home sales or housing permits, things like that. But there's still so much inventory in the pipeline where there's continuing to look to fill those open positions in a lot of industries still. And we've seen a little bit of easing on that front, but not much. I think some of the easing is their anticipation of possibly a recession in the first part of 2023. And so they're kind of scaling back expectations on hiring, because for a lot of businesses, compensation is their most expensive expense in operating their business, or their highest expense. And so kind of limiting expectations there, but still we've seen record numbers of small businesses saying that they're trying to fill open positions, that they are not finding the applicants. They're raising compensation for those starting salaries. They're increasing compensation for retention purposes. And so a lot of it's a lot for small business owners and trying to manage their business right now. And the staffing shortage is still very much in the picture.
And you're probably competing a little bit with maybe larger organizations that, I want to get your opinion on this, maybe offer employee benefits, things like healthcare, a retirement plan, life insurance. How much does that play into attracting someone to a smaller business? I like the smaller business and having worked in both, because it gives you the entrepreneurial opportunity to do a lot of things, wear a lot of hats. It's a lot more fun than doing one or two tasks. But how important are things like benefits and in terms of attracting employees right now?
Sure. Right now, as you said, it's very competitive. It's competitive with other small business. It's competitive with larger businesses. One of the areas that they do struggle with, as you mentioned, is health insurance, because it is so expensive to offer for small firms. And so we've seen, over the last about 20 years, a decline in offer rates among small firms offering health insurance as a benefit because of its cost. And so, when you have a tight labor market, that's certainly going to add to the, competitive issues related to attracting applicants for those positions at small firms. But as you mentioned, working for a small firm has its benefits that you just can't find at a larger firm. You're able to see more of kind of the whole business operation, no matter what type of job you have in the firm. Where oftentimes in larger firms, you have your task and you do that. But in a small firm, it's very different. And so that is one of the huge benefits and attractive parts of of working for a small firm, but some of the benefits and compensations, especially related around health insurance, is a challenge for many in offering those benefits and being competitive.
Absolutely. It just adds to that expense. Holly, I need to take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll explore small business confidence, talk about a potential recession. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Tax audits, tax liens, wage garnishments.
Every day we hear stories like this about good folks who are simply struggling to pay their bills. Each of them are living a frightening IRS tax nightmare, and they are afraid it will destroy their lives.
I'm a divorced single mom, and my ex-husband left me and the kids with a lot of unpaid bills, including unpaid taxes. I was really starting to show my stress on my kids because the IRS had sent me a letter demanding a huge payment from me. I couldn't afford it. So then the IRS was threatening to garnish my wages. I'm already living paycheck to paycheck. That would have put me over the edge financially.
It truly seemed hopeless, but then a friend at work told her to call the tax relief line.
The people at the tax relief line, they told me about something called innocent spouse relief. They worked it out so that all of the taxes from my ex are not my problem. I don't know how that works, and I don't care. All I care about is that I don't owe the IRS a dime, and they are not going to take my paycheck.
Even if it seems hopeless, you should call the number on your screen right now. There is absolutely no cost for the call or the consultation. You are under no obligation. If you are worried that the IRS could garnish your wages, seize your assets, even take your home, call us right now. The Tax Relief Line is here to help you. Now you have a knowledgeable, professional team of tax experts that are ready to negotiate with the IRS and fight for you to save you money. The Tax Relief Line's professionals have successfully negotiated thousands of cases, reducing and sometimes even eliminating the tax debt for their clients. It's very easy to get started. Simply call the number on your screen right now. You don't have to live in fear anymore. The call and the consultation are free.
Well, Holly, thanks so much for staying with us. Really appreciate having you stick around for segment number 2. Really interesting conversation. So, Holly, let's talk about the recession. And what I found interesting in the report is owners are expecting a better business environment, but there's still the potential for a recession. We saw the Fed raise interest rates this week, so we know that inflation hasn't necessarily cooled off. There's some headwinds there. But what are the prospects? What do small business owners think about a recession? I know I think pretty negatively about it.
Sure. Well, they are too. When we ask about whether they think business conditions in the next 6 months are going to improve, get worse, or remain about the same, we find that there are more business owners saying that they anticipate in the next 6 months conditions deteriorating and getting worse. And so they're thinking that, we're likely going into a recession. The degree to which is one of those that's debated 24 hours in the news and among, those who track these sort of things and look at the economy to kind of forecast what it might look like. At least in the first half of 2023, and it's a tricky business trying to figure out how severe this might be. Whether it's a soft landing, a hard landing, what the impact will be for small firms. We've been certainly kind of surprised by a lot of economic conditions over the last year, especially related to inflation. Certainly some of those folks talking about it got it right, but a lot of us, didn't anticipate, especially with the high oil prices and gas prices that we experienced this summer, how big of an impact that would have on small firms in trying to deal with inflation pressures. But they are anticipating a slowdown in the economy in 2023. They're adjusting business operations accordingly. For instance, easing up on some of those hiring plans that they may have had, and trying to control expenses and costs in their business to brace themselves for what might be to come. But most are anticipating a slowdown in the economy. But again, the degree to which it's kind of anybody's guess where this is going to land.
Yeah, well, I forget who it was, the president that said, give me an economist with three arms, because they would say on the other hand, and maybe it was Truman. He seemed to be very, very quippy.
Yes.
And I didn't know the man, obviously, but I heard he's my height. I think he actually was born on my birthday, by the way.
Nice.
All right. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Let me ask you about, in the short term, holiday season, Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa. If you don't celebrate, you may exchange gifts. How important is this holiday season? And we've got a lot of consumers running up debt, credit card debt. Maybe there's some worry that they might take a step back. How important, when you look into the next reporting cycle for this data, how important is that holiday season to make or break these smaller businesses?
Sure. For a lot of small businesses, this, kind of the fourth quarter of the year is very important for their bottom line and revenue to keep them going through the rest of the year. And so for a lot of businesses, whether it's restaurant, retail, this time of year is really important. We've seen very strong consumer spending still. So while, as you said, there is this increase in credit card debt has been at its record low for, the last year and a half, as people, received that stimulus money, had a historically high savings rate, and were able to pay down debt. But, we're starting to see that climb up again a little bit, not in, for what most people see as any sort of kind of danger zone, or that it might, start, consumer spending might start receding a bit. It's still really strong. So, that's where the Federal Reserve is still saying that they're going to increase rates, not as fast as they have, or not as high as they have. I should correct myself. But, scaling back a bit, but still increases in the near future to try and tamp down some of that demand out there to get, supplies and all of that more in balance, and so that we can see some relief on the inflation front. But, when looking at retail sales and things like that, for, after Thanksgiving and kind of the spending, the high spending times that consumers are out there, it's still really strong, and small businesses are trying to take advantage of all they can, kind of in anticipation of what might be to come in 2023.
Yeah, and I always know that I think it's called Small Business Saturday,
Yes.
where around the country where people try to support smaller enterprises. Last question, you mentioned about advocacy. Let's talk about, we've got a lame duck conference. They're in a conference, but they're in the Congress.
Yep.
Lame duck Congress. Then we have a brand new Congress starting January 1st. Are there anything that the federal government can do? I know they're working on a continuing resolution on the spending bill, Okay, that's a little above my pay grade, really far above my pay grade. But are the things that the Congress can do today and beginning in January to help mitigate some of these challenges for small businesses?
Sure. So there are a number of things that they could do. For the administration, kind of do no harm, not make it more difficult for small business owners to operate their business. They have a lot of challenges that are just going to have to, kind of work themselves out as far as inflation and staffing shortages, things like that. But to not, add on to the complications and stresses of business owners in operating their business. And for Congress, starting to, gain support for making some of those tax provisions that were in the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act that are ready to expire in 2025. So the 20% small business deduction on qualified income and the federal income tax rates that were huge help for small business owners in putting more money back in investing in their business. Those provisions are set to expire. And so, getting some momentum to make those permanent going forward so that small business owners have some certainty. We certainly don't want to increase the cost of operating their business. They're struggling right now. And so those are some of the areas that we're focusing on at NFIB with this new Congress and in 2023.
What about, I lied, it's not the last question. This is the last question, I promise you, because the executive branch also regulates. So how about regulation? Are there things that, as you were talking, and I'm thinking about the high cost to the small business owner, regulation is a big cost. And I'm not saying we don't need regulation, or I'm not asking if we need regulation. I know we need some regulation.
Sure.
But are there areas that perhaps get in the way of some of these small businesses thriving?
Absolutely. So one of the areas is the determination of independent contractors, not making that more difficult to navigate being an independent contractor and working for yourself instead of having to think through, am I going to be in violation of this and have to be an employee? We want to make sure that those who want to work for themselves are able to work for themselves in a manner that, is best for them. And we've seen a huge increase in business formations. And so we want to make sure that that environment is supportive of them in trying out their idea in the marketplace. So for a lot of small businesses, it's not the one or two regulations that are most burdensome. It's the volume of regulations that are most burdensome, and keeping track and making sure they're compliant and all of the things that they have to do to adjust and just kind of be aware of and the paperwork associated with it. So, kind of the do no harm aspect on the regulatory front, not making it more difficult, not adding to their kind of basket of regulations that they already have to comply with, not making it more difficult would be a huge, huge help for small business out there, dealing with a lot of the other challenges that they're working through.
Yeah, well, Holly, we're going to have to leave it there. Really great conversation. And again, really thought-provoking. Hope a lot of people take into account what we're talking about. And hopefully we see some great impact to small businesses around the country during 2023. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Thank you so much. This has been great.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news in lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more, and all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content, we'll visit our website and, of course, all of our streaming partners. We're back again tomorrow with a look back at our top segments of the week for BRN Weekly. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
But if you're tired of the same
Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the first lifestyle and wellness network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.